people who have experienced true rock bottom. How did you get out? Coming from a poorer family always meant that I was jealous of others and envious of what they had. I watched helplessly at age 7 as my dad would come home after selling substances only to hurt my mother and yell at me. Life was hard. Puberty was hard. Early teenage years were hard. I was in high school weighing only 120 pounds and rail thin. My crush laughed out loud when I asked her out, and the next day told the whole class, making me a laughingstock. The bullying came quickly, and I slugged through high school, hiding my acne-covered face in my hoodie, keeping my head on a swivel. I would come home from school only to see my mother crying about the bills that had to be paid, as well as pill bottles next to her. Our abusive dad had left and took the little money we had left. It was my mother and I against the world. However, a pill-addicted mother and a socially inept and badly bullied rail-thin 17-year-old kid did not fare well against the cruel world. Our finances got lower and lower, and we were evicted. I remember the last month so well. We only ate dinner every second night, and usually it was all tinned food. My mother scraped every nickel and dime to pay the rent for one more month, but it was not enough. Luckily, my mother's brother took us in, and even though at least we had a roof over our head, it was not paradise at all. My uncle was also rather poor, but he could make ends meet. I realized I needed to help, so I started selling substances in shady parts of town and started mixing with the wrong crowd. Booze led to grass, which led to blow. Blow led to me hustling 10 hours a day on the corner, only to spend it all on blow and do it with the lowlifes I surrounded myself with. Thankfully, no one in my family caught me doing it myself. My mother knew I sold, but we had to contribute to our uncle financially somehow, so she reluctantly allowed it. By some miracle, I graduated high school. My mother was not present. The night before, she had insomnia, so she took sleeping pills which made her sleep through my graduation. I remember coming home, picking up my stash, and going to sell the same day, not sad, just numb. I was spiraling, and even though I wanted out, I had no clue where to start. I had no idea how to do anything myself. I had no trusted mentors, but I had one friend. This friend was a 17-year-old girl named Jess, a regular customer of mine. One fine summer's day, she went to pick up some blow from me. We talked for a minute like usual, and she broke down. She confessed she was buying it to give to her dad, as he was threatening her with awful things if she did not spend her money on substances to give to him. He told Jess if she tells anyone, he will take her mom's life and then hers too. That's when I realized my life is not about just me. It's about her, this sweet, innocent girl, in a situation worse than mine. I have to help. We sat for hours and talked. First thing I did was call the police after the talk, and they showed up to her house. He was arrested for possession, and his wife pressed charges for assault. Seeing this ignited a spark in me, a spark for change. I reached out to Jess, and she thanked me profusely, and we became so close. In exchange, she wanted to help me out. I never understood how a 17-year-old girl made enough money to buy a lot of blow weekly, as well as have enough left over for her other expenses. Beforehand, I always blamed the system, blamed my background, my ethnicity, the hand of cards I was dealt, and even though these were valid complaints, they were not a barrier to escaping this hellhole. And by hellhole, I mean it. My mother was back on pills, and now so was my uncle. The roof under my head was in question. Jess then showed me that she works online, no regular job and no nagging bosses. She is literally building a business and working for other successful businessmen. She told me this is a not quick escape, the Matrix cash grab, and showed me her insights. She told me the person she learned from the most was a man named Robert Oliver. Sure, I thought, escape the Matrix 2.0 here, he comes to save my ass like Superman. So I went home, and before I knew it, I was down a rabbit hole of his YouTube videos and became fascinated with the prospect of making it out of the bottom. Then tragedy struck. A mere 2 weeks later, as I was with Jess, I got a phone call. The police. I thought I had been busted for previous dealings, but luckily it was my mother had passed away. I was not close with her for the past while, but it still affected me. So I became even more determined. Weeks of working with Jess turned into months, and my pennies turned to quarters, which turned to dollars, which turned to hundreds of dollars. Using Jess's guidance, as well as the advice from Robert, who became the person I would watch, listen to, and learn from, I was able to make enough to rent out a small apartment for myself. During this time, I lived with Jess for the few months I needed a home, and her mother and her took me in. Me and Jess are also now dating. God bless her, and God bless Robert Oliver.